guys, Ken here, your thrifty apprentice. Happy Sunday everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video we are going to be jumping into doing a watercolor sketchbook art journal Sunday. We haven't done one in a while where we just grab a sketchbook and just go for the juggler, guys. We try something different, something new, something that we haven't tried before. And today I'm going to be sort of doing this vignette style painting. So let me show you. We're going to be using the Turner watercolors that fell out. This is the second field test on camera anyway for these watercolors. I have been playing with them a little bit in the background so that I can get around to doing a review. We're also going to be using a couple of color pencils. So the very first, let me show you guys this. So this was the first thing that I did to be released today, and I did keep this video. I wasn't completely satisfied with it after I was done, but if you guys like that, let me know. I'll be happy to post a video so you can see how I did that. But what we're actually going to be painting in today's video is going to be this vignette, which is like a rust lock. I've been watching a couple of watercolor videos on how to do rust, how to paint rust. I really kind of wanted to get that feel for it because I want to make a couple of like steampunk journals, and I want to design the cover focal images for myself. So I was trying to get in a little practice. So I'm going to take you guys with me on the journey today of painting this, figuring it out. It is mixed media. It's the Turner watercolors. It's going to be some Derwent Chromaflow. It's going to be some Derwent ColorSoft. I used a few Brute Fruner macaroon color pencils. I think I used Prisma color. Used a little gouache. So it's a mixed media. Most of it is water soluble, just a little bit of color pencil. But hopefully you guys will be able to follow along with me without any issues. So without any further ado, now that we've gotten all that out the way, let's jump into the tutorial demo. As I get started here, guys, let me tell you how I got my sketch on really quick. First of all, I'm painting in the Arteza watercolor journal. This is a pretty decent student grade watercolor paper. I blocked off with masking tape the area that I kind of wanted to place my vignette in. I jumped on the internet, Googled lock and lock plate outline, filtered those results so that I could get images that I would be able to create from. And then I found the lock and lock plate clip art that I wanted and simply started to sketch. After I got my sketch right, I transferred it to my watercolor paper, and now here we are painting. Now, I jumped in with my darks first as I started to paint. And being a quote-unquote student of Lindsay Wyrick, the Frugal Crafter, and I've been kind of watching and learning from her for years, one technique that I picked up on is to go ahead and paint your dark values first. Now, of course, in watercolors, we normally paint from light to dark, but doing it this way really helps me, or it can help you see values that you may not normally see. Jump in with your darks first. So I mixed up phthalo green, I mixed up phthalo blue, burnt sienna, and then I used phthalo green to offset that until I got a really, really, really dark. And then I went in and started to paint my shadow areas. And that's the area in where the loop for the plate in the lock goes through. Any areas behind the plate itself, lifting it off what's going to eventually become the wood. And then I did go ahead and paint in the actual shadow of the wood itself. So using that same tone, I put it in mass tone up under the lock plate, up under the lock. And then I took a really watery brush and then just kind of faded that paint all the way down, but not giving it any type of definite edge or end, because that's pretty much what vignette is. I'm painting in the area where the latch would be attached to the door, but I didn't take the door out past that any, which was cool with me. Now you're going to see I have detail there for the wood on the door area, and I actually used that credit card scraper that I always talk about, just the cut off end of a credit card or a gift card. And I use that to actually put the detail in for the wood. Now, after doing that, I mixed a brown, and that brown is honestly just a little burnt sienna and a little burnt umber mixed together and then watered down a lot. I took that and went back in and glazed it on top of the wood on the bottom of the door, and then I took that up above the actual lock plate and then dropped more shadow color in, and then once again used my credit card scraper in order to give me the detail. What you see me doing here is just kind of toning the background. I wasn't going to paint anything else. I just wanted this little piece of broken door. I wanted to look like a little piece of the door had been broken off, and the only thing that was left was like the lock and the lock plate, and the little hinge, or part of the hinge anyway. Once all of that was said and done, I felt like it was pretty cool, so I grabbed my hair dryer and I dried it off, and now I'm going to jump in and actually start painting the lock. So the first thing I did was to wet it, and I am using like a number 4 round synthetic brush by Creative Mark. This is one of their creative expression brushes, which I paint with all the time. So I put in yellow ochre to start with. Then I went back in with some burnt sienna. And then I really used that burnt sienna with a little burnt umber mixed into it. And what I'm doing is I'm sort of outlining the lock. I'm starting to add in the rust on the lock. I grabbed a little green, and if I'm not mistaken, I used the phthalo green, really watered down, and I put it in to the lock itself because I kind of want to give a little patina feel. We're really just getting the first layer down here, so wasn't going for a lot of detail, just kind of wanted to get all of the colors in that I knew I would be using to create the rust feel on the lock and the lock plate. Now I am darkening in shadows more as I go, and you'll actually see me do that throughout the painting. I kind of go in and continue to saturate my shadows to make sure that I don't lose them as I'm painting, because I am going to be doing a lot of layers. And the great thing about the Turner paint is that it is very glazable. It's super transparent, so it will glaze well. We are using sedimentary colors though, so they will reactivate. So, as you layer and glaze, if you're using this technique, just be sure the more you glaze, the lighter the brush pressure you use. Now here I'm jumping into doing the actual lock plate, and for the base colors I'm using permanent scarlet, and I'm using permanent yellow, and I just kind of got that in, saturated the way I wanted to. Now you'll notice the area in between the actual loop of the lock I did not paint until I started to stipple on the burnt sienna. So once the permanent scarlet and the permanent yellow had a chance to dry on the lock plate, I'm using mass tone burnt sienna, like straight from the pan. And what I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm stippling. And that's where I'm just taking the tip of the brush with a little heavy consistency paint on it, and I'm tapping. I'm starting to tap in the rust, the brown, the oxidized metal. I'm starting to tap it in. And the reason I'm tapping is because I would like to create texture. As something starts to rust, it starts to get a really textured feel to it. Sometimes it may even chip off or flake off from where the paint itself has rusted and peeled. So that's sort of the feel that I was going for. Once I kind of got there to the point where I felt like it was okay and I could move on, I decided to go ahead and paint the lock loop and the loop that's actually attached to the door that the lock is going through. I painted that at one time. I took a watery wash of the burnt umber, painted that in. Now I'm going in with mass tone burnt sienna in order to add the rust look and feel to it. I'm also going to go in with mass tone yellow ochre because I wanted to start to add body and roundness. And I'm actually going to tap that yellow ochre in a lot of different places. Again, I'm continuing to build texture and to build layers. And thank goodness this paint is transparent, because the more you build, it doesn't get chalky, it doesn't get cakey, and you can still see the layers under it. That is one good thing about this paint, I must say. Again, jumping in here and redefining my shadows after putting in the yellow ochre. As I told you earlier, I do not want to lose my shadows. And I'm continuing to base around the actual lock plate, because eventually I wanted to give you the feeling that the lock plate is lifted from the door and the lock itself is lifted from the lock plate. So I'm being sure to accent my shadows over and over again, over and over again. And it just, to me, adds to the painting or the composition being a little bit more realistic. Now, don't get me wrong, this was not perfect. As I watch this back and I do this voiceover, I see a lot of imperfections and a lot of things that I could correct, or I may try to do differently the next time I decide to paint something that's rusty. But I do feel like this was great practice. It was a great, first run at it. Here I'm just tapping burnt sienna. I darkened it with a little ultramarine blue, and I'm just going in and I'm steady tapping to add texture. And I just kind of go back and forth between those colors, and I'm going to continue to tap and add texture until I get the feel that I want. Continuing to enhance my shadows, making sure not to lose the definition. So that's basically what I'm going to do with the paints. It gets pretty repetitive at a certain point, especially when you're kind of doodling around and playing around, kind of hemming and hawing the way I am, because I wanted to continue to add texture. Now there, I'm tapping in the shadow color. I decided to go in and actually tap in shadow color around the hinge, sort of at the front of the lock plate, around different areas of the locks, on the inside areas where there would definitely be shadow cast. And then I gave it time to dry. I felt like I had gone as far as I could with the paints, and it was time to switch over to color pencils. I'm using a few different brands, as I said at the beginning of the video, whatever I needed to give me the color that I wanted. I went in first with like a ivory color, eggshell color, in order to do my secondary highlights. Now I'm going back in with let me see, dark brown, well, Sierra brown was one color that I used, and it's just adding body. Here I'm using like a mint color, and that's going to help bring out the patina look more. And I'm just scumbling, giving more roundness to the hinges, roundness to the actual lock plate, roundness to the lock, making sure the light is bouncing off of the front of the lock. Here I'm going in with sort of a yellow ochre color, and this just to punch up the yellow ochre that I put in the actual lock plate and lock itself on the hinge. And as you can see, the more color pencil I add, and I'm not really using a lot of pressure, and the video is moving fast, but I'm really not adding a lot of pencil. I'm really just adding what I need here and there to enhance the color, to enhance the body, to give the objects more roundness where they need rounding, more squareness where they need to be squared off or rectangled off. And then I'm just kind of scumbling with the side of the pencil across the front of the lock in order to get more texture and more color there. Here I'm jumping in with like a dark brown, I think that's what it's called, from Prisma color, and I'm definitely just making sure to separate everything. Next, I'm gonna go in and add in these highlights. And after I do the highlights with the white, I'm gonna jump back in with some black. I'm going to draw my outline, sign it, and that is going to pretty much bring us to an end, guys. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. If you like anything that you saw, you learned anything, picked up on any tips, tricks, or technique, or if you just enjoyed hanging out watching the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Remember that sharing is caring, and maybe there's someone else out there who would love to see this video and learn to paint some rust. Check the video description for all the relevant links. Paints, Pencils, Pastels, and Markers is the Facebook group where we do our thing artsy and crafty. All artists and crafters are welcome. There's a list of most recommended products and a link for the Etsy shop, just in case you decide you want to support the channel. Today is Sunday, and there will be new uploads going up on the Etsy shop. Anything else? No, I can't. I'm gonna remove the tape. And remember, as I tell you guys at the end of every single video, whoa, before we get there, I must remind you of this. My tape got caught up because it was really sticky. This is a great way to remove it. Just heat it with a hair dryer or a heating tool and it'll pull right off. I am going to also jump in at this point with some bleed proof white in order to do the sharp highlights, and then that will definitely bring us to an end. Again, thank you guys so much for joining me here. I hope to see you back here Wednesday for Water Soluble Wednesday, and just keep painting and crafting.